advised, the suspect is armed and considered extremely dangerous.
Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, it is your good friend Dr. David Perrodin from down here in the historic North Star recording studio. 36 degrees outside right now, and it was sunny today. We haven't had the sun for quite a while, so that was much appreciated. So thank you to Mike, Solitude, Vanessa for being here to kick off this show. Today is license plate readers in schools, an added layer for campus security or rights violation. I will admit that my position on this has changed over the past maybe 6 months. So obviously in School of Airs, I was not an advocate of many schools proclaimed school safety devices and things like that. But when the humans aren't keeping up with things and not demonstrating systems that can effectively respond to threats of violence, maybe we need to bring in more AI. So hear me out when we get to that. But it is Misty, Mrs. Wayne. Look at this. Holy smokes. That's good. So I initially, when I was setting things up for tonight, I was looking at the show and I was like, well, wait a second. Like I have that set for the following Monday and it's supposed to be today. So I had to go in and change the date and time quick, move it to 8:15 instead of 8 o'clock. So just a quirky thing. I was like, what is going on? But we are all set, got everything ready to go here. So first of all, hope everybody is having a good day. Like I said, we're warmer than average here right now, and it's actually slowed down my firewood burn for the season, so I'm actually trying to burn a little bit earlier in the day when we usually keep it a little bit cooler to make sure I'm burning out all of that wood. But welcome. So license plate readers in school. So let's talk first about what a license plate reader is, and I'm going to do my intro for this, what'll be in the blog post. But a license plate reader, it's actually called an automated license plate reader, or ALPRS. They call them ALPers, but we'll just call them license plate readers. So you'll see them in different descriptions and stuff. But so the technology has been around for a while to be able to read license plates, right? Now, what we're going to talk about today is technology that is much more sophisticated than a camera that's reading a license plate. We're talking about a camera which will be able to identify body posture. So if you are going to stab somebody, or you're getting in that position, or if someone is carrying a gun, or if they start to bring a gun out and point it, it's going to allegedly, right, identify that. Now, there are research studies that I went through on this that have all the sophisticated diagrams and how the software is identifying behaviors of people before they engage in violent acts. And so there's a real delicate science behind this. Now, here's kind of the argument of saying, if we can identify these things early on, I mean, even a second or two before, you might have some chance of giving a warning, or if you have let's say it's a school setting, right? And you have a device which is able to identify first a firearms or something that's close proximity to a firearm or firearm posture, you might be able to, the software might be able to identify that and alert people immediately once that's done. It could be in a mall, it doesn't have to be a school, it could be anywhere. Um, so now this sounds kind of dystopian and kind of out there. And initially I'd be like, no, I don't think this stuff is worth the investment. I think they're just trying to make money off of you. But I've also spoken in depth to a person that sells this, who's on the research side. And I was amazed at what I learned. Um, so we're going to get into that today. So let's see here. It's All Pro Lemonton. Look at this. This is the Kentucky Batman. Is probably going to show up one of these moments here. It's Hey Doc here from Ron Wayne. Just shared on his YouTube. Well, thank you. Your car stolen in the perps commit violent acts. Your vehicle is listed as the one at the scene. Yeah, stuff's got downsides to it, right? Yeah. Look at this. Vanessa's saying our schools in this region had assigned officers since the 70s. All right. So cameras and video surveillance have become ubiquitous with school safety. These super tech tools have amazing capabilities, such as zooming in to read print on a piece of paper that's on the hallway floor. Talked about that in School of Airs. But cameras are almost exclusively forensic equipment. They might be helpful for identifying who stole a jacket from a locker. From a prevention standpoint, cameras are overhyped. Realistically, nobody's watching a dozen live camera streams. There's usually more, right? When you see up in an SRO's office or a principal's office or someone, it's all the live feeds coming in. Nobody is watching those in real time. And it's unlikely that if something did happen, that law enforcement is going to be able to log in and track the shooter or shooters and intercept them. Again, most school shootings are done within a couple minutes. So, but perhaps cameras and AI systems tied to those cameras have gotten a bad rap. So I'm going to revisit that in this episode. Should we reconsider license plate reader technology? It's really like a license plate. It's like an advanced license plate body pose. And that's what they call it, body posing technology. Should we consider that it has gotten a bad rap? Is it time to trial that to open up the doors on that? So, so again, my position on this initially was, in School of Airs, don't do this stuff. It's vendors this isn't, a proven, way to use cameras and AI, but again, things have advanced. So what is this license plate reader? So, right. Vanessa, right. The license plate reader cameras have been put in place to read license plate and then to alert, the police. Oh, here's a vehicle that was stolen, or this owner has outstanding warrants or whatever. So it's along that line of technology, but this is much more advanced. So again, the technology I'm talking about, and it does exist, and it does exist with a high level of significance, meaning, and again, I went through research, where they're going through and all the still images they're taking and how the software was analyzing these things. And but to identify when someone was starting to assume a posture that was going to then be followed by violent behavior. Like if I'm going like this, right, I am probably going to hit somebody, or and then or if I'm taking posture of the firearm, or that they can see the firearm, right? So think of this in a mall, or think of this in a school setting, or heavily populated, a densely populated event, maybe fairgrounds or something like that. Again, this isn't foolproof, but the thought is, if you have these readers um, around, and they can quickly get into this kind of AI database. So the reader's purpose, hey, it's Corey Slater. Look at this here, by the way. It's Corey Slater, everybody. The purpose of these readers is not to identify somebody, right, that has an outstanding warrant, or if it's stuff like that. It's the purpose. What I'm talking about with these readers is that the AI software built into these, very sophisticated, might be able to observe when somebody has, again, a firearm, or somebody's assuming a threatening posture. So, okay, the rabbit hole begins with license plate readers, automated license plate readers, those ALPers, right? Systems combine high-speed cameras and sophisticated software to capture and convert license plate images into data that can be compared to other information in other databases. Cameras used in ALPers may be mobile or stationary. They are small enough to be mounted on police cars, road signs, or traffic lights, or placed on the sides of roads and bridges. License plate readers can collect a driver's geographic location along with date, time, vehicle. Okay, that's ALPers, right? So here it is. One of the things is we're talking about more than that, right? We're talking about much more than that. So we are talking again. So does a license plate reader, does that deter people, right? Would it deter people from speeding or passing a school bus? So in 2014, a survey of more than 97,000 school bus drivers found that 76,966 vehicles illegally passed school buses on a single day. So think about that. Basically 77,000 vehicles illegally pass school buses on a single day. And we know every year that students are killed when somebody passes a school bus that's been stopped and has the flashing lights on and a stop sign out. Somebody passes and kills a kid. So we know, that this happens. So would it be a deterrent if people knew there was a camera watching? In that case, I'd say probably not, because they know they shouldn't be doing this anyway. But maybe because sometimes these when these vehicles pass, they've done this 10 times, and the 11th time they pass, there's a kid there and they hit a kid. So if there's a license plate reader and they're passing a bus, and boom, that instantly identifies them, and then there's a fine, and whatever happens from that, yeah, maybe. I mean, if there's a campaign, maybe it's a deterrence thing. But yeah, it is interesting. So Mike is saying, well, I can say I know of a recent incident in my borough that plate readers helped. It helped to catch guys that were suspected in a rash of vehicle break-ins over the last month. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. So yeah, this is technology that I think it's time. I'll tell you why. And Vanessa saying better perimeter control helps the first levels of security of any facility needing security and access control. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So the argument in support of what Vanessa is saying is, we need better security around our schools. A school, where a 6-year-old shot his teacher, managed to get a handgun into class, right? Or into the school at least. So if we have more robust security for a perimeter, that would decrease these incidents happening in school, right? Now, the argument to bring in the automated license plate readers and the sophisticated AI to try to identify if a student even has, if a kindergartner has an outline of a gun with like a LiDAR type radar thing that they use to try to pick up these like pattern outlines, maybe it would have worked. And it's saying what we're deploying now isn't working, and it might be a human element where the security of the facility is robust the first month of school, and then it wanes after that. Or if there's a national event at a school, then it jumps up. Security goes up for a few weeks and then it drops back down. So the argument here is saying, listen, we just can't trust humans to secure these settings anymore. So this is something that works in tandem with them, doesn't replace them. But imagine, I mean, like we're reading tea leaves right here, right? Topography, I think it's called. Um, if this would have been in place, the school is where the 6-year-old is coming in, and this system identifies that he has this a handgun, likely has a handgun, right? This it's using it's the visual or lidar. It gets a glimpse of it when he has it out and identifies it, and immediately it's sending us alert out of saying there's been a weapon identified on campus. Um, would that could that have prevented this? And maybe. Um, so I think it's time. So let's wait a second here. All right. I'm trying to I forget it was the Rich Neck Elementary School is where that shooting was. It's what I thought. It just wasn't in Virginia. So the Rich Neck. So yeah, so I'm talking about some pretty wild, kind of almost futuristic stuff. So, now this is different than programs that identify gunshots. Those are out there. So, in communities and stuff like that. So then if there's gunshots, detect it. Something gets dispatched, police get dispatched to that area, or like surveillance in that area suddenly turns on, and so police can remotely check that area. Uh, but that's not this, right? Because once a firearm has been fired, now we're not talking about a prevention. Really, we're talking about a forensic event. So this approach will be trying to get ahead of it. And again, I've talked to the developers or a developer on this, and I've researched into this quite a bit. And again, I'm researching published research studies that go pretty deep into the analytics. And I'm like, wow. And to think this is in place in a lot of places for a long time. And what I mean by that is there are national high security areas across the nation which have had this system in place for a decade or more. You can imagine if you're going to the Super Bowl, this has been in place for the last dozen years. But how about having this type of technology in the school setting? So it's our good friend Andrew's here. Look at this. So cameras in everyone's pocket, yet crime is happening all the time. True. So what we don't have is a camera that a dedicated system which is trying to capture pattern behavior of pre-violence or of a weapon, a knife, a club, a gun, whatever, and then identify. So there's a difference. There are some people who've tried to market a device that does that, and then also there was one, it had like in the corner of a room, it had a gun in the corner, and then it would like flash a light and say, you're being tracked, drop your weapon, which I thought was crazy, right? No one's ever going to put that in, but yeah, so this is some pretty intense, again, intense stuff. It doesn't have an offensive component, so if the software, whatever identifies it, it's not, shooting a net at you or something to try to incapacitate you. It is just alerting people of that. So yeah, it is pretty interesting. So the data from cameras being accessed indeed find someone, or does indeed find someone who committed crimes. So when the idea of cameras in classes came up years ago, it was security of the students. Now it looks like they don't want you to see what's going through the flag in their classrooms. So yeah, so cameras are all over schools. And as far as like being in the classrooms, not really. But the approach here, if you're marketing this to a school, would be, you're not recording. This thing isn't recording what's happening in class necessarily, or if it does, it records on a 30-second loop, but it's not broadcasting out. What it's doing is it's just constant analytic, right? It's kind of like a thermometer. Like if it hits a certain whatever, it kicks in the HVAC. So this is constantly scanning for this pattern of a behavior, of a threatening, posing behavior. Again, posing, and the human pose. This has been very heavily with DARPA and in the military. I found a lot deep learning AI. So, but this ties in with human pose. And then again, using LiDAR type, LiDAR is a radar that you can basically identify very subtle outlines. Again, if it's a weapon, you might be able to see that in a backpack, or if it's underneath their shirt or something like that. So it's pretty fascinating stuff. So Misty Mrs. Wayne is saying they have there's a show on the ID channel where they show how they have cameras up in high crime areas. They have gunshot detectors and noise where the cameras will move to the sounds. Yep. Yeah. And I had studied that back when I wrote School of Airs. I didn't write about it in School of Airs, but I'd studied it. So those are fairly common, especially in what's higher crime areas. So this is different than that. And that's where, when I researched this, right, or talked to someone who is a scientist who specializes in this, and said, right, that's what people are going to, we want to make a distinction between a gunshot detector and what this is. And again, this is really heavily based on human pose, and then also patterning and trying to find if something somebody has is closely resembled to a weapon, or what would likely be a shape of a weapon. And they have pretty good confidence on this. I mean, this is not new. And this is actually, again, been in place. Now you'll find when you go through the research, it gets pretty fuzzy, because these are all non-disclosure. These are high security areas. So like, they're not going to say, oh, this has been in place at the White House, for the last 20 years. But it's interesting. So it's our good friend Swamp Dog Armory. There he is. Good old Swampy. So Swamp Dog Armory did the intermission for the show. Thank you very much. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. Got some warm weather headed your way. It was warm here today. So, yeah, Corey's saying I saw something like that in CSI shows. Yeah, and the main gunshot software company keeps messing up here in Connecticut. So Vanessa, right, I'm not going to mention any company product name, but that's the problem that surfaces with the detection too, is examples, a dumpster. It's garbage day and the truck comes through and is banging a dumpster down on the ground. That's been triggering, right? There are other sounds, lightning. There are other sounds that are setting off the, are activating the gunshot detectors. So, and I'm sure you'd have those kind of false positives with this whole Alpers high-end AI posing scanning software that would be there for, schools or a mall or whatever it is. But I'm like, whoa, some questions. Is the technology good enough to do this? Probably. I think it is. And it will only get better. And it's probably not that cost prohibitive as I've read. The cameras we have that exist, we don't need better cameras. The computer software is fast, and the computers operate fast enough to do this. It's really getting keep the machine and the deep learning going. So when the software does identify something that someone was going to strike somebody else or whatever, then that gets reinforced of saying, yeah, this was a good, or like something else gets, where they're tossing a baseball at somebody and that got flagged. It's like, no, so they would look at the motions and all of that stuff that software would go through. But so let me go in here. In 2021, a research study titled Handgun Detection Using Combined Human Pose and Weapon Appearance, it was observed that this work proposes the use of the human pose, human posture, as complementary information to improve the performance of current handgun detectors based on deep learning. So again, the whole system is learning from posture that people exhibit before they harm somebody, right? Or threaten somebody. Where they're holding, where their feet are, where their arms are, where their head is. If they're bringing out a weapon that's scanning, it's whether it's a knife, a gun, a club, whatever. If they're using something as a weapon, how they're the human pose defined as the relative position of the different joints and limbs of the body is quite characteristic in shootings. In other words, deep learning AI is getting very good at identifying the pattern of not only a gun, but the human movements that happen prior to firing a gun. So thinking beyond ALPers or license plate readers, one can step into even more sophisticated AI that recognizes types of vehicles, shapes, and patterns. How about software paired with ALPers in order to detect someone holding a gun or a knife, which is what we've talked about? It's not far-fetched and already in place at some of the world's most secure settings. We just don't know about it. In the fight to mitigate drug overdoses, mosaic camera systems might be able to identify when someone collapses and immediately flash that information to authorities. So there's much more capability than simply reading a license plate. Is this a good thing? So let's go over here to the chat. So ultimately, coming to the point of, I don't think you have to do this convincing sell on this sophisticated AI pose software, right? Let's just say it's good and it will only get better. But let's say it's hit a threshold where, yeah, it's going to be reliable or as reliable as these other things and probably just becoming more reliable. So the question then comes up is, should we do this? Is this something, at Rich Neck Elementary School, they would be interested in implementing? Misty Mrs. Wayne, I'm not sure what town, Corey. I think they work with whoever pays them, company that watches in real time 24/7. So, and right, if somebody's watching in a school setting, you might go into a room, it'd probably be like the assistant principal, and you're going to see all these little, on a screen, you might have it split into 6 and you're going to see these camera feeds, but right, that principal's dealing with a lot of other things. Or the police liaison officer, they get called out to do something and suddenly they're out of the room where all the video is. So the video instantly becomes forensic and not preventive. So, hey, shoot me an email for some updates when you get a chance, Brother Doc. Sure. Sounds good. I'd like to be a guest on your show sometime there, Swamp. Let's see here. I'm certain that they have those in Washington. Yeah, I would be certain of it too, right? That does exist in DC. And again, this isn't new technology. It just hasn't come into the realm of kind of commercial or like in the school setting, and probably because it's been very costly. And but again, I think the time is there. So let's see. Yes, eventually. This is Vanessa. The monitoring systems will pretty much know where, what, and how you go about your day. So, yeah. So Vanessa kind of got us down the road to the big question here of, is this, once we go ahead as a board of education and say, yeah, we'll spend the money on this system. Now, right, the system is knowing the components of it, who comes in and out of the parking lot at what times, at what speed. It probably knows stuff like, hey, you get your car washed like once a week because it has a different reflection coming off. And who knows what data comes into this? And is it just held in that database, or does it show a pattern of, after you leave here, you usually stop down at the gas station and then you're getting a donut? And all this stuff. And so what happens to the data? And in a school setting, right, we're monitoring kids and adults behavior. When I say behavior, I'm talking actually like physical posing. Like, you don't forget identifying who they are by face or anything like that. This is all software that is patterning this posing. And I mean, there's so many other things that could come into this, and not necessarily bad. Maybe here's this hallway, people are running out this hallway too fast, right? Like there's a lot of running in this hallway. Um, and there's falls, like we've noticed like that in falls, or um, even out on the playground, right? If you had this, like I almost wiped it out on the ice a couple days ago, and you're in a cold weather, icy environment, and it sees a couple bodies, right, that slip, it could alert the playground manager or the custodians to salt or sand out there. I mean, there are ways that this could really be a good thing, right? But there's also ways that this could be really scary, because it could identify, as Vanessa's saying, it could identify you strictly by your gait, right? And also it starts to pattern behaviors, but it wouldn't need to identify you by your face or your voice, or anything like that. It could start to identify by gait. So it's just how much do you open the door to AI, and then in addition to that, what if it gets in the wrong hands, right? And somebody hacks it, or the database where it's kept gets hacked, or I don't know the answers to, I don't think anybody does, right? That's one of the fears, but we do know these systems, these databases are hacked almost nonstop, right? Equifax and all of that. These school districts, I need to do a show on that. The number of school districts that have had ransomware attacks is crazy through the roof. And then one of the things in my fall superintendent class, we don't do a case study on ransomware. And the reason, well, I talk about it, but I said the reason is, if your data is taken, student data, staff data, private information, addresses, social security numbers, whatever it is, payroll, and the Board of Education has a chance to make a payout, $100,000, $200,000, whatever it is, to get that back, trusting whoever took it is going to give it back. They'll do that. They're going, because the potential of having that information out there is, they perceive as being worse than to give money to the people that stole it, hoping they'll give it back. And even if they give it back, that they'll never release like a copy that they've obviously made of it. So it's kind of weird, because there's no debate on that. Schools, they call their lawyer, they call their insurance company, and they're just like, oh, see what we got going on here. Just wait. This is Tonto James from the Survey Center. Will you answer some questions, please? The first, machine learning. Are you for it or against it? Please answer. Are you for or against machine learning? Please answer. Spam. Kind of a late night call for that. So they didn't answer, by the way. They're not for or against machine learning. Machine learning is spooky stuff. It can get way more intelligent than you'd expect. Right. So this is the question. You're right on with it, Swamp, of, you bring this into a school, and I mean, again, it hasn't been shown that schools can fight entropy of systems. They can cover all of the doors and all of the scenarios of people outside and people coming in for basketball games, or these other things. And it's just, do you need the assist of this type of pose technology and patterning technology software that then would notify people and say, boom, like right here at this location, somebody has what's patterning, as a knife, right? I was against that, and now I'd say I'm for it. And I'm for that technology in those settings. Machine learning is spooky stuff. So yeah. So it's weird, because whoever's selling you the machine learning, I mean, they're using whatever's being acquired by the machine to make their software better, I guess, or apply it in more settings. Um, and so then, we start to get into these deeper questions of, okay, well, what if, it identifies someone or a 10-year-old, and they had a bat and they were going to hit somebody with it, but you find out it's a wiffle ball bat and they were just goofing around. But now there's this image because they're at the ballpark and identified these two, and then it took this. I mean, there always has to be this human discretion piece that comes in, but to look at this after, it's kind of like the YouTube algorithms, right? They can go through it. Oh, they flag certain words or like certain images, things like that. So, um, but I'm really impressed by the way this stuff has been and is being designed. For example, there's ancillary applications on this where they can identify, it can scroll out when people are swimming at a beach, and there's a lifeguard there. It's not meant to become a lifeguard. That's the thing. It's not meant to automatically disperse a robo lifeguard, but a lifeguard is there. This could be on a lifeguard tower, and it's scanning, and it's trying to pattern somebody who is patterning a flailing, like, whatever it is that is in distress. And that might give the lifeguard 4 seconds more advance that, oh, over here on the left behind that other person, there's somebody, right, who is treading water. They're in big trouble. And then, whatever the technology is, boom, it pops up on a screen in front of the person, so they know exactly where to go. Or I don't know. I mean, there's also these things of uh, wave runners. Wave runners, that was a big controversy when they got introduced to lifeguards. Should lifeguards be using wave runners to go out and rescue people, or should they have to swim out? Like, that initially was a big thing in the 70s. But I think it's time, right? I maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I'm trying to talk. I have nothing to gain on this personally, but I think from a safe school perspective, instead of designing all these schools with $45 million and they got weird corners, so if there's a shooter in here, they won't know where to go. Well, the shooter probably goes to school here, so they do know where to go. It's the other kids that are going to be here. Like, I don't know why this corner ends, and there's, like, Michigan, they built this school that if there was a shooting, it would be very difficult for the shooter to navigate. But it's also difficult for his kids to navigate in the responders. And again, the kid probably knows the layout of school, but I'm thinking there's so many millions of dollars spent on that versus you could have the software identify choking behavior. It could identify if, a certain wobble of gait, right? That would be different, a change from how someone in that could be if they have insulin. Or just a second. Who is this? Who is this? Who is this? Remove my name immediately. Remove this number, or you will be turned in to law enforcement in 5 minutes. It's not a great quality phone. I got to replace it. Static. All right. Anyway, so, but machine learning has some pluses, right? We can take other instances and we can go back and talk about drones. When drones first came out, man, a lot of people were pretty freaked out about drones. And people are going to be flying up above your house, watching everything you're doing. And that for the most part didn't happen, right? Like, the whole drone fear was really overblown, but drones are terrific for rescues. Out in the wilderness, fire departments, carry drones. They get out to a fire scene. They're immediately thrown, boom, the drone up to, okay, here's what's happening here. It is, and right, it's easier to use. If a drone goes bad, what is it? higher end, even it's $1,000. Not as big of a thing in a department expense. So, um, river rescues, that's another thing that drones, especially in my area, just recently have been a part of. So, um, military has been using such analysis for a long time. So yeah, that's the part. It just hasn't worked its way here. Thank God we had license plate reader to stop the madman. So yeah, I think the thing is though, if you the license plate reader, so let's say that you have a student um, has a weapon, right? And they're brandishing that weapon and the camera is catching it. It's that the camera can pattern that, or if they have already used the weapon one time and it's caught on camera, it immediately, not immediately, but right, hypothetically, it would immediately pattern that, and then it would notify, and maybe the school would go into a lockdown, authorities, whether it's a school or a mall or a baseball game or whatever it is. Um, so I think there's a lot to this that can be proactive. Now, when we say proactive, I think it's seconds in some cases. With this 6-year-old kid, man, like I've had people tell me that work in this area, oh, if we would have had the system up, like, it obviously the kid carrying stuff around, or he probably was showing it to other, like this, there would have been a chance to see this, and it would have patterned, right? So but that's, no one really knows, um, but I don't know. I'm really much more receptive after going through the studies. Let me see if I can bring up one of the studies. Kind of my favorite. It's our good friend CNT. Look at this here. Hello, Coop. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Got to resize it. What in the world? All right. No, I don't need to see the. All right, here we go. Share screen. Share screen. All right. This is one of the studies, handgun detection using combined human pose. It's the one I talked about in just a minute ago. But so again, this is not identifying who somebody is, which is a license plate scanner traditionally, right, would identify the license plate. Then once you had that information, it would go into a database that'd say, oh yeah, this person is wanted on whatever chart, or this, we had a call in, this person was threatening whatever, and this is tied to their vehicle. And so this is different. What we're talking about now is different. Again, it's more human pose. It's trying to pattern and to see if it patterns that someone has a weapon, or if they're making a threatening action. So here's what really started to impress me as I went through here. So they do these studies, right? And like you look at green screen and all these CGI movies where they are taking like all the positions of people and getting AI and deep learning to pick up that stuff. So here's some examples from the study. Now this is, for example, one, right? Now this is again a firearm, but it could be patterned on the student. So if the student is holding it and LiDAR identifies that it's right here, on the student. But let's go into this. So this is the stuff right here. Kind of looks like it's from Ghost Adventures, right? This is the stuff, normalized pose image, this whole pose image. So again, look, I mean, schools spend crazy amounts of money on crazy things. I think this is different than that. Again, I'm not trying to create a surveillance state or anything like that. This is not identifying, like, that person isn't being signature identified by their biometrics. This behavior is being identified. It's kind of like gunshot detector, right? It's not identifying who shot the gun; it's identifying that a gun had been shot. That's a after event forensic thing. This is a previous thing, but this pose can come into so many things. Like if you're about to raise your hand to hit someone, or if you repeatedly hit somebody, right? That gets detected, and it's like, oh, this person is now like hitting this other person. So the software is identifying that, and again, the software is not intervening with a RoboCop, but it is then notifying the security. So this is Poe's norm. I didn't know much of this stuff, going through it, but these studies, this is amazing stuff. And again, I had more studies that I went through on this. So right here, this one right here. This is the one where Swamp's like, okay, right here. But anyway, it's all, you can kind of check what it does. So I think the darknet 51 or 53 CNN backbone is used as a feature extractor. I mean, all stuff I don't know, right? But going in this and going into others and these open pose frameworks, this stuff has been out there a while, and it typically is pretty good, but it's not going to most of the time give you a lot of advanced notice, but it might give you a few seconds notice that you didn't have prior to this, especially if you're doing lockdowns or things, or if you have, let's say, kids or adults or whoever is showing weapons or exhibiting what would be identified as a threatening pose. So people have been caught using magnetic leafs to cover their license plate for toll roads. I have to laugh at that one. A magnetic leaf. Oh my God. Yeah. That seems like that would be something from Tommy Boy. Remember when he's like, bees in the car, bees everywhere, save yourself. That he'd be like, oh, wait a second here. We're going to New Jersey. Let me get out the leaves. And they're magnetic leaves. So that's pretty creative. My goodness. I have to laugh at that one. That is magnetic leaves. So you don't have to pay a toll. So, all right. I kind of made my day. All right. So let's see here. Privacy violation, in my opinion, says New York Outcast. So that'll be a question. Well, a central question when they go through this. The fact that cameras that actually are taking, video of kids and adults, right? I would say that's more of a privacy violation than Pose AI deep learning video, which is trying to identify if someone, again, is in a threatening or if someone is having a medical event, all of those types of things. And right, you could have a layer built into that where if you clicked a button, it could try to identify through the gate or whatever pattern. I mean, then it gets tricky. Then you're crossing the line, right, to try to identify who that person is. And I'm sure that's not a big distance to cross. That's all probably happening parallel, and someone just has to write the code or whatever to say, okay, this happened. Who was it? So, but let's say for now, yeah, it's kind of like a airbags being activated in a car, right? The car doesn't know who hit it or what hit it or whatever, it just knows the sensors have been triggered. Airbags are activated. So, yeah. Kooky AI says machine learning is based on what you say to help it learn more. What is your question? So, yeah. Well, Princess, that's another point, right? AI will have a bias. And and that bias will probably be amplified the over time. Like it's less likely for the bias to be worked out of the AI. It's more likely that the AI will just replicate the bias. So this is, I don't know if you've heard like Chat GTA or something, whatever it is, but you can use the software to write papers or blog posts and all of that. And you give it some themes and some questions, and it goes and scours the net and it basically writes this stuff. And it's pretty sophisticated. As a university professor, I'm becoming more aware of this. And it's like, holy smokes. And, you know, but one of the things is if you take it and, some students are writing on the same topic, their papers become very similar. And the other thing is, this doesn't add any new knowledge. It just curates the knowledge that's already out there. So that's kind of a risk, I think, of this whole machine learning is the machine learning might not innovate, right? It might just take what's known and curate it really well. But it's not going to necessarily make it better. It doesn't contribute to like new knowledge and new understanding. So if that makes any sense, but that's kind of one of the issues, like with this whole kind of scam that goes on right now, or this loophole people have found of saying, oh, I got to do like whatever paper for a class or for work or something, and I'll put the money and pay my cost here at Chat GTA or whatever it is, and it'll put out something that's pretty good or a blog post. But again, it's just pulling from stuff that's out there. It's not really creating anything that's unique. So in that regard, there's been some arguments that's actually just like slowing us down. So New York Outcast saying, I don't agree with license plate readers anywhere. I would just have 3 leaves on the front of my car. So yeah, well, it creates another forensic tool, right? I'm not trying to let me reframe that, right? These license plate readers, I mean, stuff gets submissible in court. It's like, oh, you say you were wherever at what time? Well, you drove past this area and the license plate reader, boom, said your car came through at this time. And maybe it's someone who says, oh, like I'm always like, there, whatever. Or it is the fact that people can be pinpointed. And that's been around since we've had really like cell phone technology, but now, cell phone and readers and all of that. The privacy is really gone with that. But why are you against them? Put that in there, New York Outcast. Safety of students trumps privacy in a public school. I think this is Corey. So if someone asked me as a school to give a recommendation on pose-enabled video cameras, if I was able to look at it and see it demonstrated, I likely would say yes, do it. Because I think it's not a replacement. It's there to augment the systems of say something, see something, but I just don't think what is in existence, right, of current school security suffers from entropy. I mean, this stuff too can, right, in low light. I mean, all these capabilities are kind of beyond the human senses, and I mean, it's a weird barrier. It's a weird threshold to cross. It's like when we crossed putting AEDs in standing orders in school, not AEDs, Narcan, naloxone. People argue and say we shouldn't be doing that, right? We should check and make sure that heroin and opioids and stuff don't come into our schools. Well, we can, but I mean, there's still, that's never going to be 100%. So yeah, let's see. Privacy has risk I'm willing to live with, New York Outcast. So more security forces in schools will go a long way stopping criminal acts, but how many schools gave enough or have enough presently. So right. So that's a very right in your face point there, because if a school district says, well, it- or a lawyer says you have to beef up your security and stuff like that, like it's just not enough. Um, and this, security turns over and schools, like after Sandy Hook, Flagler Beach, Florida, a mom paid out of pocket to have a security guard there for the rest of the school year. So it was December 2012 with Sandy Hook, and this mom paid the spring semester of 2013. And after that, she didn't pay. And the school accepted it, the security guard. Um, but I think this works in tandem. I think this becomes an extension. And again, there's more to this. I think there's a medical side to this, that this posing software can have. I think that can be in there. So I don't know. I'd have to learn. I'd have to really become more familiar with it. And it's strange, though, we never hear this come up when people talk about school safety. We hear things like, schools spending $40 million to redesign a building so it's harder for an active shooter to get through. But we don't hear much about this stuff. So, and I also, I the way this is, I think it goes beyond. Again, it goes so repetitive. If someone is attacking somebody and hitting them, this software will likely pattern that pose and get that information out. That could have nothing to do with a weapon other than a fist. So this is Mike. We'll look to schools in Ohio that permit armed teachers that pass certification training courses. Has anyone seen an incident happen there? So I don't know. So what would happen? You have the 6-year-old who shoots his teacher. So he pulls out a gun. What would be the response if the teacher was armed? Does the teacher bring out the gun and shoot the 6-year-old? Like, what is the scenario there? How does that play out? So I don't know. That's, but Mike, I think the Pose reader software works in concert with this, right? In all the ways to support a school. So maybe this is identifying someone who is patterning the dangerous posing behavior, or likely a weapon has been identified through the software, and it notifies the school to lock down or notifies the staff immediately. At that point versus a minute later when that student or perpetrator, whatever, is firing off a round or confront someone or identified by someone. It lets the school know ahead of time, right? It can activate the system ahead of time. And then you're saying with the armed teachers, then they're ready, right? Because they've been alerted. This threat has been patterned. It's attempting to breach into the campus, or it's breached into the campus. So I think these things couple. It's weird that we talk about this stuff, but I think these things complement that system complements. It doesn't take away any of the capability of the. Again, if you have a teacher in Ohio, there would be able to carry in the school. So that's where the system would have, and it would be. I've read these things to you, and it is pretty straightforward in that case that person's identified, and it might be something that they have on them, but then they are not. The system identifies, right, that they have light, or they have a weapon, right, but it's not activating any type of system of saying that because they're cleared out in the system. You guys know what I'm talking about on that. So, and again, it doesn't kick in this counter offensive. And I've seen software vendors try to do this though. So, honest to goodness, I have pictures. I didn't. I don't know where it is now, but I showed it a couple conferences stuff I was at, and it was a corner of a room. Remember, like those mirrors they used to have at the end of a hallway, and so you could see if someone was coming around the other side, it didn't collide with them. It looked like kind of like that, and it had a gun inside of it, and it would rotate, and it was remotely controlled. So someone would say, "Hey, like you, like drop the firearm because we're gonna this thing's gonna shoot you here in the corner." Just crazy. So like this posing AI deep learning software, I like. I think that's completely different than RoboCop in the corner of the room. Because again, this isn't doing. It doesn't have some counter offensive built into it. Fix the homes and schools won't be such a problem. Correct. Right. Absolutely. That's that's a tough part, maybe a disheartening part, because forensically, or not forensically, but this do that. I mean, cross that into homelessness, into drug abuse, into other areas. So just saying the home situations, the societal situations are continuing to deteriorate. So this is where we're at. This is one of the tools we can use. Yeah, we shouldn't have to use this at all, right? But the fact is, we have to. So, but I don't disagree with you, New York Outcast, and it's absolutely crazy. I mean, people now not too far from me, having to be very careful just stopping at a gas station during the day because you can be held up or your vehicle taken, stuff like that. On and off ramps by me, I think off ramps, right? Or they're starting to do carjackings there. It's crazy. So Vanessa's saying, my thoughts are if you have no electronics on you, make sure electronics are at home or off, be considered suspect. You don't want to be monitored. Yeah, I'm there's so much of that, of how the your vehicle getting is always monitored where that location is, your phone and your GPS of where you're at. So yeah, if there's anything like that, if the forensic data is going to so yeah, yeah, the forensic data is going to be discovery in court. But hopefully none of us will be in those types of scenarios. Where were you at this time and whatever. But I mentioned school layout in other your streams. Security starts the initial design of any facility. So true, right? Absolutely. And having a secured entrance. So what happens outside of the school is kids are coming in. When you have 1,000 kids being dropped off in 15 minutes at the start of a day. So yeah, design, and we have a lot of buildings out there that are, older than 2000 forward. I think design probably changed not so much after Columbine. It was the Todd Beamer High School that opened up. I don't know if that was it 2003. That really was the model for safe entrances or secured entrances and secured design of a school. Todd Beamer High School. All right. Just navigating right here. There it is. Opened 2003. All right. So in Federal Way, Washington. But let's see if we can bring up a picture. Yeah, yeah, let me show you what that looks like. So Todd Beamer was on, I think it was the flight that on 9/11 that crashed in outside of or in Pennsylvania. So he was on that Let's Roll. So there's Todd Beamer High School, Federal Way, opened in 2003. This was significant. The blueprints significantly studied on this and site design before this was built. This was made at the time to be the most secure setting for a school. So it looks really nice, right? But this is there's a picture of it. And this woods thing, I talked to a student who went there, Nick Schulander, and he said like kids were frequently going into the woods. So, but again, this is what the experts and the community thought at the time was the safest design for a school against, I'm guessing, shooters, terrorists, ramming, other types of attacks. So you can see, I mean, no one would, this obviously has, in the angles, you can kind of see this is intentionally done. This was intentionally graded, put together this way. There's a lot to it when you go in and research the design of the school, because it was made to be extremely defensive. These looks like portables. So that's probably, your security in a portable is pretty iffy. Hey, they're state champions, though. Well, we get out of that. So that's telling them, yeah, gosh darn, they stopped calling. So crazy. Here in New York State, they use LP cameras to check license plate for various reasons, one being lapse of insurance, which has been reported by insurance companies. So, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I was 4 years ago, I was hit by an uninsured driver who, after the accident, then bought insurance. It doesn't work that way, but I don't think that's bad. I would say I think that's good. Handgun detection on me, you do not ever see it unless you have severely messed up. This is Vanessa. So, yep. So Vanessa, in thinking in a school setting, one of the that argument of setting, or in a mall, or if it's juveniles, is the researchers saying they're likely to brandish to their friends or to show it or to get this thing out, right? So where you're a professional and professionally trained, with firearms and security, they're not. So the thought is they're going to slip up, and that's going to give the AI a chance to, boom, okay, here it is. So it is based on, that kid making, not concealing, that. So, which is probably pretty accurate. So Mike's saying, I would say the legal system at New York Outcasts, our justice system is broken. It's a good, right? I agree with you, Mike. And so what do we do? Again, let's say this works 95% of the time. It's really an outstanding asset for public safety, but justice system, right? What if you have defenders, somebody gets brought in, they don't get charged, or they don't have services, or services are minimal, right? And they go back out. So yeah, somebody is, they're picked up hitting somebody else, and the software immediately, indicates that is a striking behavior and stuff like that. But yeah, if the justice system isn't doing what it needs to do, that's one of the reasons, right? Near me, we have a lot of vehicles stolen, very minimal consequences in those cases, right? So, it's where you're seeing the news, and this person, was brought in for the 32nd time they stole a vehicle. There's one guy not too far that I think it was crazy. He has like offenses going back to the 70s, and it's like this professional. I don't necessarily know if he's a thief or a vandal, what his profile is, but like in the 70s, he was cutting people's phone lines and then robbing their house afterwards. But like to this day, like just got arrested a week ago for something else. And it's like, holy smokes. So let's see here. Software detecting someone holding a gun is a bit late in the scenario. You need detection before the person enters the building. So true. So this is saying this might detect before a shot is fired. So if it does, so if you are initiating a lockdown in a school or someplace, right? But a school trains lockdown, so they know if you say lockdown at a mall, what are people going to do? I don't know where to go here. But it's the seconds, right? How long does it take between the time you initiate it and when most of the people are in there behind a locked door, and police or security and security have been notified? What is it? 21 seconds or something like that. This might buy you, it might gain you several seconds, anywhere from 2 or 3 seconds to, 20, 30, 40 seconds. So it's not going to necessarily prevent it or solve it or anything like that, but it will shorten that window. And again, if it's when I was talking with a researcher on this, we're trying to figure out like where do you think people would stop and be like, okay, this is worth it, because they were saying it saves you like 1.3 seconds. People are like, well, what can you do in 1.3 seconds, right? And we're kind of going back and forth, and I said, I think 4 seconds, because if you were to go from any part of a classroom and you heard notification to the door and close it and lock it, if the door was open, for example, or like probably about 4 seconds. So I'm like, I think 4 seconds is the point you're kind of looking at here. So, advanced high-speed LP cameras with IR lighting can record more than license plates. They can view occupants as well as registration tags. Yes. Yep. And that's kind of along the lines of what this is. What's different right here with what I'm talking about is this is patterning software too. So posing, there's this whole posing software side of this, of saying, if someone is getting ready to hit someone or running in a way that usually accompanies they're running toward people, a strike or something like that. Again, I can draw a gun in that time, says John Rice, who is an artist, by the way. So, yeah, lots of people need discipline, kids and criminals, but no accountability seems to be a new thing for some reason, and they continue to invalidate privacy and make new laws. Yes. Yeah. No. Outcast, right? Kind of this whole show, which I think this topic's important, but it is based upon not addressing a root cause. So this is all trying to get at a direct cause, more seconds before it's likely going to happen. But yeah, this isn't root cause stuff. And I don't know where to go with that. There's the stuff, there are things out there which we've talked about on the show, esports, kids who are in esports, less truancy, less disciplinary events, things like that. Kids who are in, what is it? Handgun competitions, skeet shooting. There's another competitive shooting teams at their high schools. That number, when I had bending ballistics on and we pull up some stats on it, that is skyrocketed in the last 5 years, number of students participating. And we know that through participation, the better attendance, fewer discipline, so forth, so on. But these other things you're talking about, New York Outcasts, yeah. I mean, so stuff like that, I think, starts to claw back at some root issue. But then we get into politics and politicians and law enforcement and courts and DAs, and it becomes a big mess, right? We could have this absolutely incredible AI system that maybe it picks up some of the stuff. Maybe it has all this ancillary part. Right? It's in the pool of a YMCA, a school, or is a swinging beach or something like that, where there's lifeguards, and it can detect if someone's doing motions that indicate they might be in the early stage or whatever stage of drowning. If someone's having choking, or whatever this stuff could do. But we are still in this when it comes to weapon safety, violence. Nope, right? That stuff's all it's going to do is just watch it. It's going to pattern it out. It's not going to prevent the root causes. You're right on, New York Outcast. So that's this tacit thing of once we go down that approach and accept it, then no one. It's hard to. Well, it's not hard. You never back out of it, and you basically just. I don't know. It's kind of like accepting that things have gotten worse, right? And you're just going to live with that. So now it's mess. It's mess. It's a mess. So yeah, this, once we hear more details of the 6-year-old who shot his teacher, brought a handgun into school. There's been other youth, young kids, that have done, not 6 necessarily, but, but it is, wow. I don't know. I don't think that was that your message on that? I might have been off on that. Sorry about that. So yeah, I don't know. So let me go over here to the, okay, are license plate readers legal? We need Steve Leto's Law. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, at least 16 states have statutes that expressly address the use of license plate readers or the retention of data collected by license plate readers. For example, Arkansas prohibits use of license plate readers by individuals, partnerships, companies, associations, or state agencies. There are exceptions for limited use by law enforcement, or controlling access to secure areas, nuclear power plant, right? Stuff like that, courthouse. And data cannot be preserved for more than 150 days per law in Arkansas. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. Data can't be preserved for more than 150 days. So who's checking on that? Who's auditing that, right? Is the software just set to scramble data once it turns 151 days old? Like, this is the kind of stuff, when I read this in a bill like that, I'm like, it's like saying a school will not keep records for more than 7 years. Yeah, probably most schools I know keep records almost indefinitely. They don't get shredded. And so I'm looking at this saying, okay, Vermont requires a law enforcement officer to be certified in the use of automated license plate readers in order to operate such a system. Provides that active system data may only be accessed by an officer with a legitimate law enforcement purpose for the data. So the question there, what is a legitimate law enforcement purpose? And what would that look like in a school setting? I guess, you'd have to say if it was a weapon, but what if it looked like drug paraphernalia? I don't know. And so this officer goes through this, has to go through a training on how to, or to be certified in automated license plate readers. What does that involve? Right. I mean, watching a 30-minute video and taking a 10 question that you got to get 80% on. And if you don't, you just press redo and you take it over again. I mean, this all sounds good, but we all know the human side of this is, someone's just not going to attend. There's going to be entropy. They're not going to attend to these systems, or someone's going to want to use this data for a reason that it shouldn't be used for. So, I mean, those are the big weaknesses in this system. It's not that the software is going to fail, I would say, but so the Attorney General of St. James was fired moments before Biden's trip. What a coincidence. Wow. It's our good friend Sast. So the president is in Texas, and then he's going to fly over and he's going to say hi to Sast. And then he's going to take off. So, yeah. Let's see. A Boston baked bean sandwich on toast incoming. That sounds really good. Plate readers are scanning for stolen, missing person, open warrant involved cars. Yes. Yeah. So Joe's right. And that is, that was in another study of saying, in what it's called a literature review, of kind of looking at the existing ways that these license plate readers are used. So that's been around for a while, 5-10 years. And it's more and more, right, that it's scanning to try to get that information. So, and now what the people who are coming forward with this body pose system that's tied to this type of framework, they're saying we can take this a step further. So again, think of if this camera is, this camera's in a school, or mosaic cameras, right? It doesn't really matter. I mean, if the camera is feeding the information in, it's going to identify the pattern behavior. I mean, not every camera, your Ring doorbell is not going to have LiDAR attached to it. Like, trying to see if someone's got a couple vote for me pamphlets in their jacket. But this, this is also one of those things. Somebody collapses, right? Or has a heart attack, or is, I mean, there are some really interesting, compelling aspects to this. So, Princess is gotta go. So, all right. Hi, Princess. Thank you for being here. Joe Moore saying the canine deputy is my neighbor with the reader on his trunk lid. Told me that. Wow. Yeah, I remember when this was a dozen years ago, when I would go out with the police one day a month as a school administrator, and they would share like what was happening in town, right? Like, here's where we're seeing some things, and here's whatever. And so, and part of that was like, I would get that information and debrief that back out to the counselors. And so how is that useful? Well, if there's increase in drug arrest, that they're increasing that, awareness when they're doing their counseling sessions. But anyway, we would drive, and they had the cameras in the front and back of the squad, and it would just tell every vehicle that went by. It was just a click, 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 click. And, and I'm sure that was if someone would have been, a license plate would have had something tagged to it. But I'm not advocating, but I understand. Yeah. And that's kind of where I was with Narcan and naloxone. I mean, I've instructed at the university level for 19 years. And, I'm like, holy smokes. When I started, like, naloxone and thinking Narcan, and schools would do a standing order and have these things, be like, whoa, like that was, I'd have a hard time thinking that was going to happen anywhere. And now it's everywhere. So, but I mean, after I see the human systems, I'm not saying the human systems are failing, because these are very complex environments um, to secure, right? And but if you have the potential for this posing software to couple into that, and people might say, oh, then it's going to make people not do their job as full because they'll rely on the AI. I don't believe that. But yeah, I mean, I live in Wisconsin, 421 school districts, many rural and many where it's like, here's a high school, 4 miles away is an elementary school, 7 miles away is another elementary school. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, there is a point of, if we do have more security in just different capacities and security trained and CPR and first aid stuff, that's can be a great thing. I just don't think we're going there. I think we'd be there by now after Sandy Hook, Parkland, and with a Democratic government, the Democrats, if that's where things are going to be, so I'm looking at this saying, I don't, and, studying safety for years and writing about it, I just don't think that's happening. And so where else can we go? What else can we bring into the mix? And that's this posing AI and this patterning AI. So again, I think it's good. But as some of you have noted, and it is true, like, it's what if it identifies, somebody who has a knife, right? And then they, there's a lockdown or security, and security intercepts this person, and they go to before a judge, and the next day they're out there again with the knife because nothing's, I guess, been done. So these systems have a lot of fail points. But in this case, I don't believe it would be this poser AI system. But to be realistic on that, though, it's going to buy you seconds. And, that's where you got to make the call. I should say, is it worth it, right? Because anyone would say, yes, it's worth it. Because when it comes to customer perceived value, anything for a life is considered worth it. But to an extent, right? I mean, because you could make an argument, well, if we drove cars at 5 miles an hour, instead of 44,000 people dying a year, we know we decrease it to 4,000. 40,000 people would be alive if we drove at 5 miles an hour. Well, right. So AI, you have 10 seconds to comply. Yes. RoboCop. And so that's what's not coupled with this. And that's where, it has to be clearly laid out, is there isn't some part of this that activates a drone or a robot or RoboCop or BoloCop. This is notifying a system to hopefully, including security and lockdown and whatever, to hopefully jump in. So holding sensitive data indefinitely is a problem, particularly stuff that could be used to create a fraudulent person, like social security number, licensing. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, for schools, and I'm not saying every school does this, but there's turnover in schools and IT and stuff like that. If you're storing data, that's a folder on a drive or on an external hard drive or a backup somewhere. What is it? It's nothing, right? It's costing, I've got an external drive that's 5 gigabyte right here, and this was like $100 maybe. So, I mean, years ago, you had the records room in a school, and, you'd pull out these banker's boxes and you'd have the files of students, right? And you'd keep them for 7 years if there was a challenge on their educational record, right? Which could have been like a student with a disability and they're receiving Medicaid. They can go like up to 7 years if there's a challenge on some of that. But anyway, it's very rare, very rare. But that was actually something you'd bring up a truck and then this would have grinding stuff and it would, eat all of it up. Big shredder. And now, it's just, oh, yeah, well, in case we ever need it, I got it saved like over here on this, F drive and it's in a subfolder. It's just so easy, right? Or if somebody leaves and they don't know that next tech person comes in, they don't know that this file exists out there or this folder exists with this information. And really, it's not a problem until it's a problem. Will LP camera data be open to freedom of information? I don't know. I mean, who knows? There is something with your camera data, like if it is, so license plate. So in this case, I don't think it would. What I've talked about because it's not it's not recording that data, or if you record on a loop for a short amount of time, it wouldn't be subject to freedom of information necessarily. And this doesn't have to have audio with it. Again, this is just identifying these sets of pattern behaviors, these poses. So I don't know. It's a good question. I would tend to think it wouldn't be. I would say the lawyers will come out on that and say it's not. If there's a video part of that of showing what's happening, just like cameras today, like you can get that through. Well, you'd have to have a reason to be. You just can't ask the school for an hour of their hallway camera for freedom of information request. So I think the only way that the school would be compelled to do that, the camera stuff would be if it was a court or a judge that did that. That would have to be through some lawsuit, some discovery type thing. Because otherwise, yeah, you can't just you can't compel a school to turn over video of a fight or well, that'd be part of an investigation. But just say, oh, like I want all first floor hallway video from this hour on this date. So, good question. This is freedom of information. A lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but more and more schools and government entities don't comply with that. So, they legally they need to, right? So let's see here. I can pull up. Yeah, this one's out there. No, it's behind a paywall. Well, that's not good. That's not good. It was a good article too. It was about a school that had 26 record requests and either denied all of them or didn't respond to any of them. So, but again, it's the justice system in this case. It's the accountability system. How does that school get in trouble, right? If they go to a judge and the judge says, well, I'm not going to issue anything on it. I'm not going to compel the school to, fulfill this. So, plate readers are barely AI. They're more like advanced surveillance, a database overlay. It will aid efficiency in finding. Yeah. So right on, Joe. So it's two different things. And that's actually when I read these research studies, I'm not a big fan here that the language is very close. What I mean is they're calling this the posing software of a violent act, whether it be gun, knife, and hitting, whatever. This is all part of an automated license plate reader, ALPR, combined with high-speed camera and sophisticated AI software to capture the posing behavior. So there should be another name for that, because I think this is it's very misleading, but it's ingrained in the research. Like all the research identifies these as license plate readers. So that's some way that um yeah, that's a good point. AI audio recognition of vehicles. Could be, right? I think the thing right here, Jim, is this is identifying the posing pattern. Like if someone is pulling a gun out or a knife or they're stabbing someone or whatever it is, it's identifying this posing. Um, so Jim is saying there was a story from somewhere, level one text covered about a reporter got in trouble for reporting government website was buggy, had social security numbers on the site. I remember that story. Reporter got in trouble. Oh no, for reporting bugs on website. Jeez, a search like this is always a little iffy. So I don't want to be creating a lot of these searches in Google. All right. Let's see. Actually, there's quite a few of these that came up. So let me do this. There is hacking investigation into journalists who click view source on government website. So I think that's one. There's again a couple of these articles came up. So yeah, so it doesn't seem like it was a malicious intent, but then this person okay, Mr. Renaud did not access anything that was not publicly available, nor was he, Mr. Renaud, in a place he should not have been. So, wow. What was the, expose the social security numbers of more than 500,000 public school teachers, right? So, and Missouri Governor Mike Parson announced he was going to prosecute a journalist who had warned the state. That's crazy. What is it? February 22nd, 2022. Man, that's nuts. Wow. That's crazy. I'm glad you shared that. So I would look at that and say, I don't, you look at this sophisticated AI technology and all stuff, but I'm like, you have to trust that people are going to correctly interpret use these systems, that there's a common sense part of this. I don't know where I'm going with that exactly. Of saying, so this is someone that got on a government site like this reporter. All the information was there, not in any place they shouldn't have gone. They just like click source view and this information comes up. So I think I'm just trying to underscore, like, we coming back to the school part, like, well, why don't we have better school security? Why don't we have, well, here's like this government website. Why don't they have better maintenance of their website for security and personal data? It's just like humans are so fallible, right? So many mistakes. And these systems we build for ourselves, in theory, are very sound and maybe protective and things like that, but we can never maintain them, either, through enough people to maintain them, or we just, things evolve, we don't evolve, there's entropy in the system, we don't care anymore. One of the things with Todd Beamer, when I interviewed the student, Todd Beamer High School, he said after a month, like, they were taking metal detectors, wands, and everybody coming in and out of the building. That took too long, so they just opened up the other doors and just had kids come inside. As per the interview with Nick Schuliner. So, man, that's a good point. Remember the good old days when the Cookie Monster was a messy puppet? Yeah, that Cookie Monster, gosh. I miss those guys. Yeah, the reporter even told the government to repair that crap before he went public with the story. So Jim, like, so that's one of those things that again, just you know, you just shake your head, and it's like, do people become very measured at what they? I, what you're saying. I think that really gets to the Good Samaritan stuff. When we had Lisa Lenny on and the law of necessity, and um, you know, in this case, like it's almost a Good Samaritan type thing of a white hat, right? Is what they call them if you're usually that's purposely like hacking, but this would almost be like a innocent white hat thing where if you discover it, you let people know you're not trying to extort them. And man, journalist was probably a snob about it. So yeah, that's crazy, right? I mean, well, Andrew's right in bringing that up. That there are in that story, there's two sides to that story. So was there something going on where you know the the government said we've got this, but we have a gag order basically on you. And a good story with this is the old city or the city court building built in 77 in New York City, and they built it with an X as the base coming down for the first like 12 stories because there was some church wouldn't sell below or something, and they had to do this weird design. And then the building, a college student, engineering student, looked at it and said, I think if you got a wind in this one direction, like this, it could fall over. And they discovered they're right. So the city partnered up and with the media, New York Times and all that, and they just shut this whole thing down until they fixed it. Like there was no story. People still went to work. This thing hypothetically could have fallen over, but do it. Type it in. Do a Google search for the City Core bank tower disaster, whatever it is. Never fell down, and they had to fix it. And the only thing that they did when they fixed it, as far as like public and media, because people knew and people who worked there, they said, we have an opportunity now to strengthen the building for like a 150-year storm. So we're going to take advantage of that now. And I don't know what the logic was, if they were completely done with the building, if they had a few things to do. And then everyone in the public was kind of like, okay, it sounds like a good idea. Like you're making it even safer than it is. But there was I don't know if there was blackmail because the student wasn't threatening to go to the media. But I think in that whole thing having worked out, like the media was basically like, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'd have to look at the way, but the media did not report on that. Anyone can click right on a webpage and click view source. So, holy smokes. Wow. That is crazy stuff here. So what does everybody think about bringing in, for school safety, bringing in these high definition camera systems, well, which we have. They're not any high, these things, they're probably phone quality. I mean, things are really good these days with tech. But having this AI learning, machine learning software, deep learning software, and they come in and they say, hey, we can here's this system, here's what it can do. Detect somebody having a medical event with a high probability, that, somebody that choking, passing out, identify violent behavior, hitting, weapon, or posing before that, or matching through LiDAR if there is a weapon that does show on a portfolio on a person, a little wrinkle on their clothes. And then it'll notify, right? Or it could immediately activate, go straight to your lockdown system or whatever it is. Like that would be the pitch. And then where do you go with it? And as far as cost, I mean, you're paying the cost of the software. Probably, I mean, they'll try to sell you cameras too, but it'd be picked up by a state grant probably. So, well, look at this. It's John Crump Live. It's a good friend, John Crump Live. Hey there, buddy. So I'm going to stay very close to this topic because I think it's going to start emerging this year, 2023, in schools. This will be what you're going to see. Again, it doesn't get at anything societal. It doesn't improve anything, but I think this multi-purposed way to market this AI posing software, I just think it's going to happen. So, and again, I think in some capacities there's good for this, and how's the data being used, and these are big questions. So I don't see this as being. I see this as being something a community is going to run with. And then once, a couple schools get them, more schools get them. But again, I think I could go up to the plate and go to bat for this. Again, not working with a vendor or anything like that. And it's because where we're at now, even these best made systems of people covering this area, this, whatever, you still do that. You just add this into it. So, and Corey, all right, Corey. Thanks for being here, buddy. Let's see. Z is saying automate license plate readers. They're everywhere and private companies. So yeah. It's our good friend Heath. Yeah, and Sal too saying goodbye, Corey. So yeah. So what do you think? What is, again, your board of education? You get the newspaper. We still do. They deliver the actual newspaper, but you get the newspaper, and you're opening it up, and it's a school board considering license plate reading system, to detect weapons and violent behavior on campus. I don't know. It's a long headline. I'd probably go a shorter headline. What do you do? I mean, where do you go with this? I think this stuff could have real potential at large events, like outdoor, at a high school track or football field or things like that. Yeah, because of the computing power and all of that. So again, I don't think it's not going to be frequent that it would be a benefit on a medical event, but it could be, like, and I would make sure that that's out there. Or remember, like at recess, if they're or even you're monitoring your sidewalks and there's a monitor of a slip, right, behavior, and there's some other data that goes in, like temperature and stuff. It could be, hey, like the playground or the stuff's really slippery now, so they're notifying, boom, immediately, administration or buildings and grounds. So in that case, the data is just patterning out to it seems slippery. And so, that'd be a good thing, right? That they're getting out there and getting some sand or ice down, or ice melt down. Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're right. They're everywhere. So cams are forensic. You're right, below. Wrote about that in School Bears. So the real time is what we're talking about here, the posing software. So again, if I'm running at someone and I have a knife, the software, and they're 50 feet from me or whatever, 30 feet from me down a hallway, the software would identify the knife and identify I've got it up in a body posture position that's more associated with inflicting harm. So then immediately if it's identifying at that time versus when the person gets stabbed and they yell as being the point when the notification happens. But the thing is like that, this system might buy you 4 seconds, maybe buy you more than that, and maybe if it works, right? If it works in that specific situation, maybe other situations, whatever, the weapon's been concealed, the software's not picking it up until it actually happens. But yeah, the concept here of teachers unions opposing it, teachers unions would oppose like instruction in classroom, what's happening in a classroom being recorded. Yes. And that also would be that schools pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for their curriculums because they get them from, the different companies. And that's proprietary and you can't be recording that stuff. So again, what this is, think of this more as like a smoke alarm that's in the room. It detects that certain behavior or it patterns that. It's not keeping a record of the last like 20 sniffs the smoke detector's done. But right, we know this could easily be hooked into a system that would record video and audio, and then it could perpetually be out there. And is it a FOIA request or is it, and again, that's information that a principal isn't taking in to evaluate a teacher. But then if that information is being recorded and something goes on in the classroom, fight or whatever, it would need to become a forensic piece of evidence. So it's like you'd have to create these systems really without any audio, and that it's only capturing parenting this behaviors. It's really weird. Like, I don't know. It's a good question. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird. One of the things too that changed in my university syllabus this year's is they asked to put in a statement. They had a template there of students to not record what's happening in class. And that wasn't for like the efficacy of instruction stuff, but it was basically right, teaching materials. So what was happening, I don't think at the university I teach at, but from what I kind of gathered with some training that went with that is, teachers would develop, like I developed, let's say, case studies, and we do them in class. Then someone is recording it and then they're putting it out on the web. Well, that might have been something the university paid me to develop with this course. So now it's like a breach. When you instruct, there's also, if I have certain things behind a well, not really firewall, but students to log into Moodle, if they have to log in somewhere to get it, it's a way to protect it. But I don't know. It's a good question. John Crump Live. It is a Band-Aid for the real problem societal. Yep. Yeah. That, John, we've gone through that about 3 or 4 times already, coming back to, the root cause stuff is never addressed, which then kind of makes the argument, well, then you got to look at these other systems that, you wouldn't need these other systems if the root cause was addressed, but no one wants to go there. So I'm saying, well, maybe it's better, like if you get this type of surveillance system that is with opposing software, someone has a heart attack or, a seizure or whatever, this is patterning and identifying that out and getting 911. But then where do you stop? Do you give GPS coordinates to where that's happening? Right. So do you take photos, which would make sense, right? To have this other metadata. And now what do you have? So yeah, we were talking about that earlier too. So, that system is, that's where I think people think of when they think of these posing patterning systems. And right, what you're describing there, and I've read the studies and the recent stuff saying, dumpster being banged, sets it off, lightning, other things. And then once that shot happens in a large area, you also have to, police or security has to be dispatched into that area. And I've never been a fan of that. I think that's been way oversold as a standalone. Now, someone could say, "Oh, yeah, but if it's at a concert and there's 5,000 people all together," but yeah, so what we're talking about through the articles and in tonight's show is that the forensic or this is the forensic side, right? Of that's kind of when something happens and then after. But beforehand, if you had software that was analyzing the posing behaviors of people, like if I have my hand up and there's a knife, it identifies my hands and arms in a position like they deliver harm. That's the point where it's doing the identification and the alerting. It doesn't know hypothetically, it has no idea who I am. It just knows that there's a human that has done this and they're notifying. I assume they have a location. So I think I would get behind that actually. And I think there's good for medical on that, but how in the world do you not as a vendor just say, oh, we can add video. We can add this, we can add all, this other patterning or this other stuff into it. And then what do you do with it? So I don't know. I mean, then does it become one crazy, all-encompassing security system with sensors all over the place? Like, well, we can hook this into your fire detector. We can hook it up to these special antennas outside by your baseball field, because if there's lightning that could hit, it'll detect it and it'll work into the system. And I mean, it's endless where you could go. And I'm saying once you would do that, then the nodes fracture so much and this thing becomes so vulnerable and like, do you want, you're basically are defaulting your own ability for situational awareness to make a decision to the AI, right? Because let's say you're outside, right? And you're counting, oh, if it was any danger out here, even though like I see the clouds and I can see some lightning, and remember, the machine would detect it, right? It would do the beep, 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 and we'd be off the field. So, yeah, it is pretty crazy. All camera systems can be vulnerable to external attacks from wireless. Yeah. Yeah. Right on. Right on. So, and it seems, one thing is people are so eager to off source this into technology, right? Had to back out a few times. Every time it came back at me, same school ads. Well, that's interesting. Huh. Interesting. I just logged in here, my personal account, and it gave me 3 ads for John Crump Live. So it's like the John Crump Live show. Live. Dum 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 live. John Crump. All right. Personally, I like this, this show tonight and my position on this much different than where I was 5 years ago. And I kind of was, asking myself, like, what's changed? Like, why are you open to this now? And like, even, listen to the experts talk on it, not listen, like we set up a meeting, we talk about it. And I'm just waiting to kind of figure out like, well, here's where it starts to fall apart, or here's a hole in their arguments, because of kind of the positionality. That's where I kind of have, and maybe my bias, right, of thinking, but then they're showing, they're demonstrating, and how the logic and also they kind of stay in their lane. They're like, this isn't made to be a quote unquote video production, a camera. This is meant to identify these patterns. Da-da-da. Wow, my voice just ran away there fast. There are even visual attacks. I have 15-watt infrared laser that can fry cameras. Spam bot. That guy is always spicy. So, what did I? Oh, I bought some folder dividers. So they came in today from Amazon. This is pretty cool. Kind of reorganizing some stuff. But God, what else did I have? Oh, I had 75-watt incandescent light bulbs. And you might think, well, why? I have a fixture. It won't run LED. I don't know why. And it's not just the little connector at the bottom, the contact, but if it's in my stairwell, and it would be difficult to change out that fixture. So I was able to find on Amazon and pick up some 75-watt bulbs, which will hopefully last me a few years. And then maybe I'll do that, but it's crazy. It became illegal to sell those. I don't know how I got them. Right? Bought them from a store, but Bolo, thank you for putting John Crump Live's contact information there. YouTube, John Crump Live. I was a guest twice. So great shows both times. Appreciate it. Thank you. When it boiled water, set fire on paper on fire, I knew the listing lied. Holy smokes, spam bot. Holy smokies. So, yeah. So what do you guys think here, man? Where should we go? This, I think it also fits in with what exists natively in schools. They have these cameras and all this stuff. So you're not having to replace a system. You can couple into a system. It's the AI part that's new, right? But then you're hypothetically going to some centralized deep learning base with all this information coming in. And you'd have to already have all these studies and research coming out of saying, we're going to start alerting you. And remember, from day one, when you buy the system, it's going to get better. I think that's a good selling point, right? Most systems have entropy. From day one that you put your bollards in front of your school, they start to fade and rust, and the concrete around them cracks. And so you have this entropy. But I think the pitch here is, actually, I should write that down. I won't, and I'll forget it. But I don't know, like I had in a show somewhere. But the pitch would be, this system is great from day one. Like, it's really solidly built, but it will always get better. The system will always be getting better. And nothing you have to do on it. It's always going to be getting better. God, that's a hell of if I was in the administrative role at the Board of Education and it was compelling and I was kind of on the fence anyway, and that statement came out, I'd be like, well, it's true, because that side of it would be getting better. So I think that's compelling. Yes, it's compelling. My floor mat, I don't know where the hell that thing is. It only came from a state over, so let me do a check on this. What else did I don't really have any. What did I have? Trying to think here at the Safety Doc studio. It's on its way. Yeah. Where is it? It's still on its way. Wednesday, January 11th, it'll be here. So it's not going to be a score for you if you're waiting outside my house, because it's just a floor mat that's made to the size of my area here. But yeah, so The experiment could be ED209 for 2 months, and they shut it off. Holy smokes, Bolo. Wow. Wow. So, um, yeah. Hey, did you know? Here's one of those did you know things. Well, we had on a previous show lost person behavior. There's an app for that, and it was initially funded by I don't know Department of Homeland Security, and then well, anyway, if you go now on Amazon, you have to pay for it. It's like $9, and it's not through Homeland Security; it's through a private business. Um, from what I understood on that was this company that did this. They built this under this government contract, right? And then again, I'm not trying to get in trouble here, and I could be wrong. I think the company did a great thing here, like putting this together. And then I'm assuming at first the government said, "Well, we'll pay you so much, and then just get this available for people," which might not be accurate at all. Um, but let's move this to present. All right. So it's $9.95 now if you want the Lost Person app, and it's this DBS Productions. And again, I'm saying, Homeland Security, whatever, the government should go to them and say, what does it cost for a contract every year? We'll pay you, and just let people download this if they want, because this is like lost person, elderly, kid with autism, whatever. This is crazy. So it's just nuts. Like, you'd be doing that, but but yeah, I don't know where I was going with some of that stuff, but this really gets crazy too, because what if you can make an argument for this of saying why aren't we paying for this software and making it available to all schools that and maybe we'll give them grant money if their cameras or to get more cameras into this, but why isn't this purchased either at a federal or a state level? Holy smokes. Now that would be interesting, right? Just so you know, schools have very sophisticated software provided by the states. I know. And to monitor like the searches that students do and to kind of try to pattern out if there's certain searches that correspond to threatening behavior, and that all exists. It's been there for at least 15 years, but now it's very good. Yeah, it's very good, but it's more accurate than what it was. But it's so anyway, like that's all available. All schools take advantage of that. But the and I don't know, this whole thing, yeah, there starts to become really big questions in it. Yeah. Or does it become a community steps up and says, we're going to be the first community to use pose learning, because elderly people, if they fall, if there's, an accident, if there's, or just like, or the safety, right, of our community, if people are doing threatening behavior, or I don't know. It's, but I think it'll be in schools in 2023. You'll see articles, you'll see, ABC Nightly News, David Muir, oh, this school is doing this. And you'll see it. Again, I can get behind just that poser feature based software. Once it gets beyond that, then, I don't know. I do not know. So, wow. Dun, 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 and eep, 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 dun, 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 dun. Hey, all right. School of Airs. on Amazon, places that sell books. Also audio, which I narrate it. That's $10.99 on Barnes and Noble, other places that sell audiobooks. And then, except some places like Audible tend to charge more. I don't know why. And Velocity of Information, which is also an awesome book. So thank you for your support of the channel. We did surpass the payable threshold amount. So that will be something I'll claim on my taxes and be like, yes, we did it. So appreciate that. Any final questions here? Anything? Anything? Any final questions? So, Spambot fodder. School network monitoring softwares have failed every data exfiltrations test I've done in the last 5 years when I stopped doing that testing. So, yeah. And when I said schools have it, like they all have access to it and they use it. Like it flags forward, oh, like why were you searching, whatever, how to make barbed wire out of paper clips or something. But there's on the school side, right? They're only going to investigate so many of those. And so it's one of those things I think that this is provided to schools to monitor, or students are making statements of possible harm to self, and but the human first, you're right, the technology isn't nearly as nuanced and accurate as what they claim, but it will if you're repeatedly like putting that information in there. Usually like it will hit enough buttons, right, where it will send that alert forward to somebody and say, hey, like this person's been doing these searches. But then what do? The humans, what's the follow-up on that, right? What's the, you have to understand the context of all that. And if it is a genuine, how do you match the help with it? Or I don't know. Oh my goodness. That is crazy. All these tough questions here. It's Bolo. Everyone like and leave a comment afterwards. Let's push the algorithm. I'd appreciate it. And Ron, you've got a popular channel. The show continues to stay at 1,255 or the channel subscribers. So I have not gained a subscriber here for a little while. So, oh my goodness, it is a super chat from John Crump Live. Holy smokes. Wow. I appreciate that. John Crump Live. So I was a guest twice on John Crump Live. I appreciate John and Flying Rich and also John, sometime we should touch base because there was still that piece of legislation from the Safer Communities bill and schools background checks for 18-year-old or older students. I don't have a clarification on that in my connections and research, and I don't really know what's going on. It hasn't become an issue yet for the soups, but John Crump Live. So yeah, our favorite journalist friend. I appreciate it. I'll tell you, being a guest both times, that was awesome. That was, yeah. So John Crump, John, we're going to give you a confetti cannon, not canny, right here. $20. You get a lot for $20. Wait, we're going to add a little bit more in here. We're going to add this lightning. We're not done yet, though. I'm gonna have the special silver or this gold right here. All right, I just sent it over to you. It's kind of an Irish. Good luck. So, wow. Look at that. Thank you. Complacency is bigger issue, not the tech. You got it, Heath. You got it. Complacency. And complacency leads to entropy of systems, right? People don't take care of things, right? there was a district, right? Got a nice swimming pool and all of this, and then didn't do the required maintenance on it. And 10 years down the road, some tiles are coming out, and they're like, well, did you do this, this, and this? Like, some of it was like you have to drain it down at a certain point and whatever, and apply this finish. Not a big thing, but now that and they're like, nope. So yeah, it's complacency, and part of this is turnover in these systems. These people don't last long in a lot of positions, right? Whether it be a school position, law enforcement, or where they're working. So, so you're reliant on this induction process to be really good, and it's not. So that's like in schools, right? This whole thing of thinking, the issues fortifying the school. The real issues, right, is improving the community, improving civility, right? Stuff like that we've talked about. In the show, and we've talked about, we should have this was months ago we did this, but I mean, we should have a national month that is first aid, everyone first aid CPR, and also Good Samaritan law, right? Like that should be in commercials and, this as advertising campaign. We have food allergy month in April. We have, fire prevention month in November. This January is National Soup Month. That's true. It's also, get this, January is also National Thank You Month. So you're supposed to say thank you to people more frequently in January. I'm not making that up. That's true. But we should have this month, right? Of everybody, there's a promote, and it's free that you get first aid. You don't have to pay $20 and materials fee for first aid, and then pay again for CPR. I mean, these should be trainings anybody could and should go into. And then because people don't know what Good Samaritan is. Well, and they really get hesitant. Does my state have my back or not? It's just crazy. They shouldn't have to think that. This should be more overt. So sounds like it's right out of the 50s, Doc. Holy smokes. Yeah, I don't know. Sounds like it's right out of the 50s, Doc. Dun, 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 dun. Sassed one too many. Dun, 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 dun. I say thank you in January more than most months, but that's because I'm saying it to all the happy birthdays. Laugh out loud. Oh my goodness, Misty Mrs. Wayne. Her birthday was last Thursday. So Misty Mrs. Wayne. Yeah. So pretty cool, right? National thank you. I don't know. I found that a couple of years ago, I think, and then tell my kids, but yeah, national thank you. The National Soup Month. So I can get behind both those. That's a good thing. Wow. So I think, that pose software too, that was out in the NBA, National Basketball Association, maybe 8 years ago. Teams were starting. Well, first of all, the company that did that, I think it was called Second Step. They had contracts with all the arenas to put these cameras in all over the place, very discreet, might be the size of my thumb, right? But these little cameras. And then they were recording the motions of the players. And what it would do is they start to sell the analytics back to all the NBA teams. And it would say, like, not necessarily to plan for another player, but it might say, like, when your guard does this behavior, like they dribble 2 times to the left and then they pivot halfway, they turn it over 20% of the time. So, like, here's the analytics, and bing, bing, bing. And they take that and they practice, and they'll sit down with, like, the player and say, hey, we didn't know you're doing this. You don't know. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but, like, let's improve on, or let's change this up because other teams might pick up on it, or like you're just so much better when you do like this move. It's much more complicated than that, right? So, but it's also kind of that very premise where the major leagues are really taking this data. They're not doing it so much to kind of defeat the opponent but to make themselves to recognize patterns where they're not as successful, like making certain moves, certain plays. So like, let's get rid of those. So it was 78 today. It's only going to be 70 tomorrow. Well, it's 35 right here. So it'll be half of your tomorrow. Look at it as the Kentucky Batman. Ron Wayne, his good friend, the Kentucky Batman. So they're riding along in a sleigh. So it's our good friend, the Kentucky Batman. So the Penguin's back there. Penguin's checking you out. So I'm grateful for today. Yeah, it's a good way to think about things. In closing, I'll say I've been doing more consulting and even kind of a little more consulting, and one of the things I've noticed personally is it's attitude, right? I mean, you have to have a competence to do certain things, right? But usually after a while you get that, but it's how you present yourself. And if you come in and you have a smile, and so with those reflection neurons, like if you smile, it's more likely people smile back, or they'll feel like what it is like to smile. I mean, there's this emulated response type thing. But generally, if I come in just thinking it's going to be a good day, or if we got some things we got to get through that's a little, not as smooth as what I had hoped, we'll just get through it, right? And the older I get, and I know it's not this way like in everything that you do in life, but I think a big part of it is just how you present yourself. And if you are positive, and so that's been a big change. So I don't know how to describe it. If I think I'm enjoying it more. I mean, it's work, right? It's not easy or anything like that, but it's just carrying myself with a positive attitude. And so those small Spambot fodder motion cameras are feeding a Moneyball type analysis of hockey Pee-wee players here. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, I could imagine on a sports side that it would be used for scouting data, but again, it's going to be used on your own internal players to say, when you move at a 22-degree angle against the basket to your left, your this level of success versus like cutting at this angle. So I mean, which is really it's good, and it keeps people on their toes, but like, right? Everybody's going to kind of be tweaked continuously, where there really wouldn't be much of an advantage. But what you might get though is just much more improved quality of play, because it would be identifying the player and team deficits in a way that you weren't really doing before. But I don't think there's one team that really jumps up. I mean, it's kind of a Billy Bean and Moneyball. Yeah, that could happen for a year or two, but like everyone else would pick up on it then. Moneyball is still one of my favorite movies. I think the Kentucky Batman can take him. Hopefully smokes. Look at that. Yeah, Vegas uses that all the time. Yep. So the stuff we're talking about here is new in the school context. It's not new, generally speaking, although the technology in the last 12 months has made a leap forward. So, yeah. But again, like I could say, I'm excited about it, but then this is part of a system. It's part of maybe what is then a justice system. And if that system doesn't respond, then you could this could work perfectly, and the outcome would still be a failure because the system had failed. That this had to interface with, this branch worked okay. It informed, but then so Fortnite is a tool, not a game, because it's free. It means it's an op. Yes. Yep. Right. It is, isn't it crazy to think too, like how, pretty much everybody has Gmail and their Google Docs and Google Sheets, yet no one pays a penny a year. And I don't know, guys, remember back in the 90s when the internet started to become available through dial-in, and you'd have it locally, you'd have this place you'd call, and it would be your like core computers, like DSL and whatever it was. And man, I remember that. And just how, yeah. And so you're paying though. You might be paying like $70 a month to get your internet. And then you didn't have a Google address. You had the whatever, David at core computer, whatever .net. And then yeah, but now Google has all of that, right? I mean, more unbelievable amounts of data. Could you imagine if Google came out and said, "Hey, if you want to maintain any Gmail account, it's going to be $1 a month, and if you don't maintain it, in 30 days, we'll erase everything off of it. Right? It'd be non-retrievable." How many people would pony up $1 a month to keep their Gmail? Probably everybody, right? For the most part, like you probably have 98% compliance on that. I don't know, man. It's weird, but I'm sure like doing that would open up this big, aspect of liability. Because right, if something kind of goes weird with the Google thing, you try to sue Google on your Gmail, they could be like, "Well, this is free." Like, we had terms of agreement. Plus, you weren't paying us for this, although like informally, like through data analysis stuff. But Net Zero was free, had ads. I had Net Zero when I was in college, buddy. When I was going back for my administrative degree, and I was the only one in Superior to have it in the dorm, because they were redoing their CAT network and they didn't have the dorms wired up in summer. I dialed into Duluth, Minnesota, across the Mississippi River, and it was like the whammy game. All around the outside were ads, and I think every like minute or whatever, you had to click on an ad and watch it for like 10 seconds, and then you get your internet back. But your internet was free. Man, it was the greatest thing. And people like were amazed that I did that. They were like, "How did you do this?" And they couldn't get it. They had to stay at the library, and yeah, because boom, I knew I read that there wasn't going to be internet in the dorms, and back in, I don't know, the year 2000, 99, 2000. So you didn't have Wi-Fi back then, didn't have smartphones. Anyway, like that was an experience, the Net Zero thing. And you'd only spend a short amount of time on the web too, like because that made it such a horrible experience. It's like, in a whole night, you might spend 30 minutes on the web. AOL CDs everywhere. Oh my God, I remember that. I remember getting mailed. You guys remember that too, getting those CDs in the mail. Insane. My employer pays for G Suite that includes personal box for me. Holy smokes. You guys, good for you. I'd have 2 minds connected to my work. Oh my goodness, Mr. Mrs. Wayne. Cheers, everyone. Early day tomorrow. It's our good friend Sast One Too Many. Thanks for being here, buddy. So it's our Cannonball Run friend, Sast One Too Many. Sast, we're going to send you out here with the old Cannonball Run flame there from the kicking in the overdrive right there. Wow. One more time. To our good friend Sast. All right. Remember getting those AOL CDs in the mail. So, wow. Did I just say that? I must be out of sync here. Okay. Night all. I miss and constring. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, folks, I am going to call it a night and take you guys out of here. Thank you so much. Thanks to John Crump Live, a very generous super chat here on the show. Appreciate everybody. And here we go.
How were the beans and chili that you had for breakfast?
They were delicious. Thank you for asking. But now I am very gassy.
I'm sorry to hear that. Who let the frogs out? Pew, that stinks very bad. I have to open the window. Oh no, my cap flew off and it was sucked into the engine.
Holy smokes, the engine just cut out. We should use the Decide model to help us make the right decision.
Mayday. Mayday. I am declaring a beans and chili emergency. Please advise for landing.
Flight 019er, 2 miles northeast. Turn left at 90. Maintain 4,800 to establish an approach. Engine 5, dispatch. Pockets of fire all around.
As chaos erupts, torrents of conflicting yet urgent messages gush from media outlets. What is the magnitude of the incident, and what should people do to protect themselves? Dr. David P. Perodin teaches you how to prevent mental burnout by observing indicators and building a robust member check network. Reporter James David Dixon of the Detroit News proclaims, "The velocity of information will empower its readers." Drawing on current events, history, interviews, and scholarship, the velocity of information is an education in the way people react and adapt to change in this fast-spinning world. Never has it been more important to sift facts and stories for truth and meaning. There are teachable moments on every page. Buy The Velocity of Information, Human Thinking During Chaotic Times. Available from your favorite bookstore or online retailer.
Describe the odor. Is it like when something electrical is burning? And so on. Ridiculous, right? We don't shift the investigation to the reporter. But that's covertly what the school district thought needed to happen to prevent their investigation scrambling principals from burning out. And as this paragraph smolders, it would be prudent to consider bringing students with disabilities from the sidelines of safety and center them to active roles of detecting and reporting threats. So we had a rather difficult meeting. Upon due diligence of examining the reporting system, I informed the district representative that I could not justify modifications to the existing model, as such changes would make the system less accessible to students. Well, that was a short chit-chat. The district folks believed, or hoped, that the threat input system could be modified and maintained with fidelity. I wasn't in alignment with that hypothesis, and so I was thanked and given notice that our partnership would be over at month's end. Business is business, but in school safety, it's never as simple as that.
Holy shit, a ghost. Do you mind moving out of the way? You're blocking the TV.
Oh, shit. Sorry, man.
It's okay. Thank you.